Hello, my name's David Kelly and I'm the Executive Director at the British Chamber of Commerce here in Singapore, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, Ready for 100, How the Pandemic Has Impacted Singapore's Preparedness for Longevity. A huge thank you to our event partners today, Prudential, for sharing their insights and knowledge with us, and for your continued support of the Chamber as well as being part of this longevity agenda. As many of you will have seen, Prudential released a report earlier this week, and today they will share how COVID-19 has impacted the health, wealth, work and relationships of Singapore's residents. Our expert panel will discuss how we can continue preparing for longevity amid the current crisis. There will be an opportunity for Q&A, so please do post your questions into the dedicated Q&A box on the Zoom function following the presentations today. So with that, and without further ado, I would like to welcome Ping Ping Tan, Head of Corporate Affairs at Prudential Insurance Company in Singapore, and moderator for our session today to begin. Ping, a very warm welcome. It's great to see you again, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, David, and a very good afternoon, everyone. Really delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar, where we will be discussing the impact of the pandemic on our overall well-being, as well as our ability to live well for longer. So before we go into the panel discussion, I'd like to take some time to share with you some of the findings from a new research that Prudential has done in partnership with The Economist Impact. This research is part of a larger thought leadership program that Prudential started in 2018. And through this program, which is called Ready for 100, we want to explore how prepared Singaporeans are to live to 100 years of age. So in the research, we measure readiness and preparedness for longevity based on 4 areas. We need good health, enough savings, the right skill sets to stay relevant at work, and very supportive relationships that can contribute to our social well-being. If we are lacking in any one of these areas, our longevity experience will be compromised. So the question is, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted our readiness for longevity? Now let's take a look. So to begin, it came as no surprise to learn that people's well-being has been adversely affected by the pandemic in the past year. Mental and financial well-being are the 2 most impacted areas. So overall, we're seeing that 35% of Singaporeans, they say that their mental health has declined since the pandemic began. This could be a result of social isolation, loss of contact with family and friends, and economic uncertainties. For people in the age group of 25 to 34, it is as high as 4 in 10 who reported a decline in mental health. And one of the experts we interviewed explained that the younger people experience more problems, probably because of the reduced opportunity for social interactions, which are very important at younger ages. Now, from the financial perspective, a larger number, about 47%, which is nearly half of Singaporeans, say that their financial well-being has declined since the pandemic began. This decline is greatest among those aged between 45 and 54. In fact, over half of Singaporeans, about 54%, admit that they would struggle to meet their financial needs in the event of an unexpected illness or job loss. Now, this is a higher figure than what we saw from the 2018 survey when we asked the same question. So what are the reasons for people's poor mental and financial well-being? One of the reasons is weaker income earning expectations. So nearly half, 43%, say that their salary or wage earning prospects have declined since the onset of COVID-19. Understandably, this has contributed to a significant amount of financial stress. Another reason was that work has become more stressful since the onset of the health crisis. And this stress could be linked to anxiety about job safety or the remote working experience, which started as a result of the pandemic. Interestingly, only 50% of Singaporeans, as you can see from the chart here, enjoyed working from home last year. People may not have found their work environments to be conducive for working, and there are also people who have found it challenging to balance professional and personal demands when working at home. And it seems that these financial and work-related pressures have affected the quality of people's relationship. Fewer people today, 62%, are happy in their most significant relationship. When we asked this exact same question in 2018, an overwhelming 92% said that they were happy. So why is this the case? It could be that people are spending more time in close proximity with their parents, their spouse or children, or it could also be the result of prolonged social isolation, with families living in different countries and not being able to see each other. But whatever the reasons, this finding is obviously very concerning. The lack of relationship fulfillment can have a long-term adverse impact on our mental as well as physical health. But there are silver linings from this pandemic experience. Singaporeans have become more receptive of digital and technology in general. So we are seeing digital adoption increasing across banking, insurance, and investments. From the research, we found that more seniors today are using digital as a means to manage their savings, their insurance, as well as their investments. According to one person that we interviewed for the research, Ms. Lim Sia Ho, who is the executive director of the Senior for Centres, she said that many older Singaporeans now have gone into online share trading during the pandemic. So that's a really interesting observation. So what are Singaporeans saying about their readiness and preparedness to live to 100 years of age? Well, I guess the good news is the pandemic hasn't had an adverse impact on people's preparedness for longevity, at least not yet. So from a health point of view, when we ask people how ready they are to live to 100, 31% said that they feel prepared. This compares to 23% who said so in our 2018 study 4 years ago. From the health perspective, 29% of the respondents today said they feel prepared to live to 100. And when we asked the same question back in 2018, the percentage was about 26%. Well, however, I guess the key point to note here is that while there are more people now than 4 years ago who say they are ready to live to 100, the percentage is still very low. We're talking about fewer than 1/3 of the population here who are prepared for longevity and who are prepared to live to 100 years of age. And if this pandemic persists for longer, there is a chance that people's preparedness for longevity will begin to suffer even more. So I guess the question is, what can we do to mitigate this impact, to mitigate the impact of the pandemic and to get more people ready for longevity? To this end, here are some recommendations from the experts that we interviewed. On the financial front, we need Singaporeans to understand the risk of outliving their assets. There has been a lot done to raise awareness on the importance of long-term financial planning. However, the longevity risk of people outliving their assets because they are living longer, this really needs to be reinforced. And with the pandemic's adverse impact on people's short and mid-term financial well-being, financial planning education becomes even more important. Secondly, we also need to ensure that the older Singaporeans do not retreat from digital. So senior citizens may be tempted to return to traditional means of managing their finances after the pandemic is over. Financial institutions and government agencies should find ways to motivate them to stay and grow more comfortable with digital. And lastly, on the health front, we must reduce the stigma associated with mental health issues. Mental health literacy should be taught in schools and become part of workplace training. Well, I've come to the end of my short presentation. I hope you find these key insights interesting. And now, let's now hear from our expert panel for their views on how we can all prepare better for longevity amid this pandemic. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Loke Wai Chong, Lily Cho, and Goh Teng Kiat. Let me take a minute to introduce all of them here. So Dr. Loke Wai Chong, he is the head of Integrated Health Promotion and Clinical Director at the MOH Office for Healthcare Transformation. In this role, he heads the implementation of initiatives around health promoting behaviors. He also helps to develop initiatives on mental wellness and financial schemes. And we also have Lily Cho, who is the Singapore CEO and Head of Institution for Asia Pacific at Schroders. In this role, Lily is responsible for driving strategic initiatives and partnerships across both institutional and digital channels. Before joining Schroders, Lily was a senior research consultant at Mercer. And last but not least, we have Goh Teng Kiat, who is the Chief Customer Officer at Prudential Singapore. He is responsible for the company's customer strategy and initiatives. And he's also responsible for marketing and events as well as brand. Teng Kiat brings with him more than 20 years of experience across different industries, from FMCG to financial services. And before joining Prudential Singapore, he was the Chief Marketing Officer at the consumer arm of OCBC Singapore. So to all of our panelists, thank you so much for being with us here today. You've heard the research findings that Prudential has just released in partnership with The Economist Impact. So now I would like to ask each of you to share your thoughts on the findings, as well as I'd like to hear your views on how you think the pandemic has impacted people's ability to live well for longer. And Teng Kiat, I'd like to begin with you.
Thanks, Ping. Thanks for sharing the presentation. I think a very engaging, very interesting sharing that you have done just now. I just want to remind everybody who has seen it, I think you will have recalled that Ping talked about 4 areas and 4 pillars, which are very important for a very positive longevity experience, that of health, wealth, work, and relationship. What we will have seen from the report as well, it shows that this pandemic has actually made the relationship between these 4 areas, the interdependencies between these 4 areas, a lot more pronounced. I mean, just cite a few examples, right? As what we have seen in many reports, or even experiences that we have seen from friends and colleagues, is that working from home, taking that as one example, because of the need to do that right now, and having to do that with your spouse, other family members that's living in the same household as you, or even children who need to actually do home-based learning, actually make that whole process perhaps a little bit more stressful as well. And that actually would then affect your mental health and eventually could affect your overall health well-being as a whole. That's one example of the interdependencies that we talk about. And it's the same thing for relationship as well. From that simple example of working from home, that could actually affect the numbers, as what we have seen just now from what Ping has presented. So if we take an analogy that these 4 pillars are very much like the 4 legs of a strong, functioning chair that we all sit on, right? All 4 needs to be strong. So what we are seeing from the findings from the research that we've done this year on the impact of the pandemic seems to have showed that it has, in some ways, influenced the findings negatively. Most of the numbers have actually dipped a little bit, but I think this is where awareness is important, that we reverse the effect right now, make it more positive. 4 of the pillars reinforce how it can bring about a positive experience in longevity for all of us. I think that's important for us to bear in mind and take off for each of us when we start to look at pandemic and accept it as a way of life going forward. Over back to you, Ping.
Well, thank you so much, Teng Kiat. That was very well said. Indeed, I think to achieve holistic well-being and to really prepare for longevity, we have to focus on multiple areas. So not just financial, not just health, but work, as well as relationships as well, which are really, really important. Dr. Lok, can we hear from you, your perspective?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ping. And thanks, Teng Kiat, for those remarks. I think the study in drawing together health, wealth, work relationship is just so timely and so true, because all aspects of health are interrelated too, isn't it? I mean, even just thinking through the impact of the pandemic, and here I wear a medical hat, thinking about this, right? When it first started, there was a lot of uncertainty about whether the infection would be lethal, will it last a long time? And here we are, more than 20 months into it, and we are still not normal. So we talk about new normal, next normal, but actually it's probably never normal. And I think we have to start to think through those long-term impacts. It's very interesting that the study that you commissioned says and shows that mental health is the most impacted, because you see, holistic health as a whole is physical, mental, and social health. That's how WHO defines it. So actually, there's no health without mental health, and that's a very famous saying. And if mental health is so badly impacted, then we have to think of how that actually affects the rest of a person's health or the population's health during this time, isn't it? It's interesting on the physical front, and this is not the only study, but other studies have shown around this time that physical health is not as impacted as we thought it would be, and there may be counterbalancing impacts, right? I think there are people staying home more, maybe eating home-cooked food, and that may be healthier than going out entertaining and eating out all the time. Activity-wise, there's less time on commutes. People are working from home, and perhaps some are rediscovering walking in nature, walking near the house, fresh air, and more physical activity. So there are counterbalancing impact. There's also, of course, sedentary lifestyles if you are stuck at home. And again, it depends on how work was affected, have been affected through this period. And it's no surprise that work stress has also come out as pretty high in the survey. But I want to draw in just the social health piece too, and I'll talk a little bit about it if I have a chance. That the very fact of isolation impacting especially the so-called sandwich generation, younger people will feel it most, because a lot of their lives do revolve around social interactions and engagements, and even at work. And with hits like something like a COVID breaker and some of this on for a while, off for a while kind of measures can actually impact that pretty badly. So social health is very, very much linked to mental health. And so it's also no surprise that we see relationships suffer, mental health impacted at the same time. Maybe just one last point to say that we are preparing for longevity, and even, in fact, if we are really want to be prepared, then first we have to be happy people, because happy people live longer. Many studies show that stress, in fact, can shorten life. Some people say by more than 3 years. If you are worried about your health, if you're worried about your family, your finances, your work, then that stress can actually take a toll on your longer term health and longevity. So I think it is timely that we think about how they are all interrelated. And this forum is a good time to discuss these things. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Loke. Indeed, just to echo what you say, no health without mental health and social health. I think one positive thing about this pandemic, it has also bring forth, kind of a raise the awareness about mental resilience, mental well-being, and we can talk about that a bit later to see, how we can actually all build better mental resilience and well-being amidst this pandemic and beyond this pandemic. So now I'm going to quickly move on to Lily Cho, to hear your views, especially, with kind of the research has shown that financial well-being, has been very much impacted by this pandemic. So really interested to hear your views.
Yeah, thanks, Ping. First of all, thank you for having me here to the Chamber and Prudential as well. So Think Kiat and Dr. Loke actually addressed two of your 4 pillars. So this is about health, about relationships, about work. Let me tackle the wealth part. So clearly the pandemic has definitely upended many aspects of our daily lives. If I could just perhaps use 2 words to simply describe what the pandemic is. First, clearly a disruptor. And secondly, it does play the role of an accelerator as well. So on disruption, the pandemic clearly has a profound impact on Singaporeans' financial well-being, as your study rightly pointed out. Threats on job security, loss of regular income, low interest rate environment affecting the compounding effect of our savings, price increase across the board, inflation concerns, those forces work together to disrupt savings and derail our investment plans to meet retirement goals. In fact, we Shoulders conduct our own global investor survey 2021, and we surveyed nearly 24,000 people from 33 locations across the globe, including Singapore. Again, the findings affirm what Prudential study is. It revealed that 49% Singaporeans were unable to save as much as planned, citing reduced salaries, work income as the key reason. Now, secondly, the role of an accelerator, that is a little bit more positive. So the most evident is the rate of adoption of sustainability, digitalization, which you kindly presented in a short while ago, and also accelerating innovations. Now, the scale of this is simply unprecedented. We have never seen this pace of development, nor the scale of it before. Now, sustainability and digital mandates are not new. So environmental issues, social and financial inclusion, diversity, for example, have simply been brought into sharper focus, and steps are being taken to address them, which points to a positive development. Now, what does all this mean? So with heightened longevity risk and the risk of outliving our assets, this has put the spotlight on financial planning and bringing it to the forefront, highlighting the importance for Singaporeans to really take stock of your finance, take the necessary actions, review your investment portfolios, make adjustments as well to your lifestyles so that you can keep your life retirement goals on track. So back to you, Ping.
Well, thank you so much, Lily. Very well said. I'm going to stay on the pillar of financial well-being. We know that, I think from the research, it reveals that only 29% of Singaporeans are financially prepared for longevity, as in financially prepared to live to up to 100. The other 70%, kind of feel like, they may not be wealthy enough to actually live that long. So the question is, how can we build financial resilience both amid this pandemic and for longevity? Any views from you, Lily?
Yeah, if you could spare a few minutes for me, I really like to address this question. So let me try to frame it in using 3 aspects. So first, I think that the need to consider a non-linear retirement pathway with multiple life stages. Second, I mentioned about digitalization and the benefits. So we really need to embrace financial inclusion and new opportunities of really brought about by digitalization and democratization of financial assets. I'll come to this point in a very short while. Third, don't shy away from decumulation. I'll explain all this in a very short while. Now, let me go to the first point on non-linear retirement pathway. Now, much of the current wisdoms on retirement planning have built-in assumptions of a linear path of accumulation and then decumulation to achieve retirement security. The reality is not reflective of the lives we're living today, and we constantly need to adapt to different life circumstances and changes accordingly. Now, with the accelerating pace of technological advancements and disruption across multiple industries, Singaporeans will likely experience a series of career disruptions throughout their working lives. And for the younger ones, job changes to meet different aspirations. Now, the recent COVID-19 pandemic has brought job security to the forefront, with many having to participate in the gig economy in order to make ends meet. Now, adding to this complexity, it doesn't help are the increasingly frequent episodes of market volatility, as well as the extended planning that need to accompany a longer lifespan and growing number of non-working years. So as a result, this is something that we would like to recommend. Savers can consider planning for retirement by really adopting shorter multi-year plans to better suit their personal needs and changing circumstances. And this is to supplement a longer-term retirement master plan, and it's helpful for individuals or the moms and pops in Singapore to assess and make important trade-offs between their spending, saving, investing needs across different life phases. Now, let me touch a little bit on financial inclusion. Digitalization has certainly made possible financial planning for the masses, bringing about greater financial inclusion. So you could see sound investment advice, financial planning are no longer confined to the higher net worth individuals, but are now much more easily accessible through different digital platforms and channels. Now, in recent years, we have seen a sharp growth in digital wealth services for the masses. And in your survey, in your study, it was really interesting. The older folks are also picking this up. Now, the demand and trend towards personalized solutions that is actively adapting to an individual's evolving life cycle, cash flows, personal preferences would pave the way forward for more holistic financial planning to better achieve life goals. And this is an aspect that Shoulders is very passionate about, and we're working with a few partners to drive innovation in this area. Now, I talk a little bit about democratization of financial assets. This is where you allow bite-sized micro investments, so investors with very small starting capital can enjoy the benefits of investing, diversification, and compounding over the longer term. Now, this accessibility will go a long way in helping people to really start investing early and build financial resilience for long-term retirement planning. Now, the last topic is something that I like to really address as well. Decumulation and eating into your retirement savings is often seen as a taboo in our culture, something to be avoided as far as possible. But by accepting decumulation as a characteristic in your retirement years, then retirement security becomes much more within reach for more people. So instead of viewing decumulation negatively, it can often act as a bridge over temporary loss of income or to meet increased financial commitments, providing us with the added flexibility to pursue our life's aspirations. So there you go, 3 steps to potentially build some resilience in our long-term retirement planning. And really, longevity in Chinese, 长寿, is meant to be a blessing. It's meant to be something to celebrate. And I hope we could do something to really embrace and celebrate longevity with all this.
Well,
so back to you, Ping.
And indeed, very well said. You know, we can actually build a very positive longevity experience if we prepare early for it. And I think it's also, you know, it's really positive to know that, you know, now we're seeing greater accessibility to financial solutions, you know, through digital, through technology, and through bite-sized financial solutions, as you've just mentioned. So I guess that's a positive that has come out, you know, from this pandemic. Thank you. Just, you know, turning to you right now, I think most of us, you know, in Singapore here, and I can speak for myself, you know, when we start to do financial planning, we probably plan for a life of 80 or 85. You know, we kind of calculate from now till age 85 to see whether we have enough savings to last us till 85. But you know, today the lifespan is on average 85. But many years down the road, you know, we could be seeing a lifespan of 90 to 100. So what do you think we need to do differently if we're doing financial planning for 100-year life and not for 85-year life?
Thanks, Ping, for the question. Actually, it's a good continuation from what Lily has just spoken about, right? This, and she kind of opened up with this living life in a non-linear way going forward. Just for the benefit of the audience, I think just to clarify, if my understanding of what Lily has just mentioned is that the life for a lot of us right now, if we look around our friends and colleagues, it's no longer as linear as you study for a period of time and you work for a long period of time before you get into a retirement phase. And that's it, right? What is kind of known as the 3-stage linear life. What we are seeing that is adopted by a lot of people right now is a multi-stage life, right? Of which is non-linear. You could study for a period of time, you get to work, you take a break, you kind of relearn, picking up new skills again, and perhaps going on to a slightly different career path altogether. I have a couple of friends who are starting to do that among my circle of friends, and actually one of them that just came to my mind is this lady called Qian. She's was actually my colleague in OCBC, since you mentioned that. In the last 2 years, it's been a little bit traumatic for her in some ways, right? About 2 years ago, she lost someone who is very dear to her. Unfortunately, her friend actually succumbed to depression. Lost his life as a result of that, and that actually shook her up a little bit, and started to really view financial planning very seriously, and sort of gave her the impetus to look at her life in a very different way as well. So what's happening now, and in fact the last 4 months or so, she started to engage herself into relearning new skills, reskilling herself. And she took up an executive MBA, and she did a lot more than that, right? She, in the last couple of months, in fact, took off to Fontainebleau in France itself to finish up one of the modules in INSEAD. And after that, decided to travel around Europe, right? Taking advantage of her presence in France to move around Germany, Spain, France, and so on, without really a clear plan. And along the way, she actually has mentioned that she's picked up an amazing experience, pretty much the best of her life right now, because every day is a new surprise, and every day is a great experience. And I think she is enriching herself tremendously throughout this. The reason I mentioned her experience is that What she has fortunately done is very sound financial planning right from the start. And that enabled her to achieve and do all these very different experiences, not at the end of her life during a retirement, but very much in between different stages of life she's doing right now. So I think these are the things that we need to bear in mind for a lot of customers that we serve in Prudential as well. And I think right now we have a good suite of products and services to help them. And Lily kind of mentioned 3 principles, and I guess I may be picking up on this magic number of 3. I do have 3 simple principles that I think we also like to advocate to our customers and to the audience. I think one is, which Lily kind of mentioned, is time. Time is actually quite a good asset when it comes to growing our wealth and looking at investment, right? And that doesn't mean you should think about starting early, but also looking at longevity in a very different way. I think in the past, we may look at longevity perhaps as a worry, as a concern, say, oh my goodness, if I lead a longer life, I need to finance it for a much longer period. But if you think about it from time being expended for it to be used more optimally for investment, that is actually a very positive thing if you look at it, because you have more time to actually grow your wealth. You have more time for your investment to even ride perhaps any market volatility that comes along the way. So I think that itself can be a great asset. The second principle is about protecting what we have right now. Protecting what we have, for example, health, right? So it's always good to look at how do you protect yourself when you are young, when you are able, right? As we all know, I mean, insurance do ensure that we have you properly covered, right? So if there are any pre-issues that a customer may have, I think sometimes those can be excluded in your protection. So when you're healthy, when you're free of issues, start protecting yourself. And that's really important to remember. And that also extends to wealth. How do you protect your wealth while you have it, right? So again, looking at the right coverage while you have, so that you are properly taken care of, if certain unexpected instances could actually happen to you. The last thing is, besides just protecting it, how do you grow it, right? So we have looked into some of the things that Lily have talked about. But is it a time for you to perhaps even reassess your risk profile to see whether, hey, given all the market situation and changes that's happening right now, what kind of risk should you take, right? Should you assess it in a very different way and prime yourself to invest to grow, right? Because you have a lot more years right now to live. So adopt it and see how that can actually help you manage the different types of stages of life that you may want to adopt while you enjoy a much increased longevity. The last point maybe I just want to add on is a point that wasn't built onto what Lily has mentioned. Definitely, we see a lot more tools made so accessible to everybody right now, right? Either it's on the web or even on the app. So just want to mention that in Prudential, we have actually introduced a lot more of such tools. And one of them actually sits very comfortably right in your pocket, in your mobile phone, which is our Powers by Prudential app, which we released last year. So it has features that covers both for health and for wealth as well. So as tools such as symptom checker to make sure you are given the kind of right triage to provide you a good advice to take the next course of action if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, to even tools for you to set goals, plan for your goals in our latest wealth features that we introduced within Powers by Prudential. So I think all those tools are available. I'm sure there are also others, but just want to highlight that is available and launched by Prudential just in the last couple of months. So back to you, Ping.
Well, thanks so much, Teng Kiat, and Lily as well, for all the tips on how to plan for longevity. I think it's really time amidst this pandemic for all of us to take a step back and think about how do we financially plan for longevity? How do we financially plan for disruption? And also how can we kind of leverage the the new opportunities that has surfaced as a result of this pandemic, digital tools, a wider suite of financial solutions, bite-sized financial products. So, take a step back and really kind of think about that. I'm going to move on to the health pillar, but before I do that, just wanted to encourage the audience out there, if you have a question for Dr. Loke, for Lily, or for Teng Kiat, please send in your question in the Q&A chat box. I'm sure the panelists here will be very happy to respond to your questions. Okay, I'm now going to move on to the health pillar now that we've discussed quite extensively about wealth. We know that the psychological impact of the pandemic, that has been the biggest conversation in the past year. In fact, the word mental health, has come out so many times in conversations. From our research, we saw that 35% of Singaporeans, they feel that their mental well-being, their mental health, has been impacted by the pandemic. So Dr. Loke, two questions for you. Is enough being done to promote and to support mental wellness? And more importantly, we spoke about how to build financial resilience earlier on. I'm very interested to hear your views on how do we build mental resilience amid this pandemic?
Yeah, thanks, Ping, for the question, and I'm glad to have a chance to talk a little bit more about health, but also in the relationship with resilience, right? Actually, just to pick up from the points raised by Lily as well as Teng Kiat, on building the financial resilience, protection, and security, and about how not to outlive your assets. And I think in a way we are talking about just to take the ready for 100 kind of theme, 100-year life kind of theme, right? Non-linear and multi-stage life. But it's interesting that it's not just tangible assets we need to take care of. It is more and more so the intangible assets, isn't it? Not the skills and knowledge, not just our skills and knowledge for careers and jobs we have, but the health part, which is vitality, having good relationships that will sustain us in up times as well as down times. And then the transformational assets, being able, as Teng Kiat says, to live through life, ups and downs, and maybe even reinventing, like his friend did, really relooking at one's career and your path, because 100 years is a long time. And if we can take it at a correct pace, then we are not just burning ourselves out or burning all our resources up and having nothing left during our so-called retirement years. Actually, if we keep in good health and good activity and in meaningful purpose, I think there's lots of things we can do in 100 years. Well, just to say also that it is true, many different surveys during this time, especially now way into the pandemic, have shown similar findings. Around the same time this report was released, another survey said up to 76% of people in Singapore felt some level of sadness and depression during this period. So it's very real. And I think if has enough been done is a good question to ask, because certainly at the government level, and I won't talk too much about that, because in a way we are trying to look ahead and say, how can we involve more people, right? Society, community as a whole in this whole endeavor. There's been Action, Alliance for Action, campaigns such as Brave the New, Stay Well, Stay Strong. You may have heard all these before, Emerging Stronger Together, Stay Prepared. And then, of course, throughout the whole COVID, there was a COVID-19 Mental Wellness Task Force, which has now become an interagency task force. So at the government level, it's really all hands on deck. Different ministries, agencies coming together to say, how can we do this better as a whole and really support the community in unprecedented levels of stress. And I would say it's everything all linked together again. If my health is at risk, or if I perceive my health to be at risk, if my job is at risk, my finances at risk, my relationships at home are also rocky, it all hits us in different ways, and mental health takes the toll. I think in ways that we can do more, I think we could use more of technology. So thanks, Teng Kiat, for even for Prudential, for Pulse, right? And there are many other online as well as apps that have come up in this time. Online resources has grown, ballooned, and blossomed during this whole period. I mean, if you want to go and find your mask, you can go Mask Go Where, you can go Token Go Where, Flu Go Where for your nearest clinic, for your swabs, and also vaccinations. And of course, different websites have come up and sprung up with information, one-stop portals for you to find information on where to find help. So I think as a person in the audience or anywhere in the community, please avail yourself to so many resources that are already available today, right? Sometimes the risk is sometimes too much information and of course misinformation, and we have seen the impact of that, not just overseas, but even locally. And I think we have to all got to be more savvy of what we consume online and make sure we look out for the credible sources, let's say from MOH or something like that, right? In the same vein, and I make a plug, right? You can see above my head, mindline.sg was something that, in fact, my organization conceptualized and developed all within 2 months in the midst of the pandemic, so that ordinary people in the general population could access it, find a way to self-assess their own stress and mental health levels, and then also to find, I suppose, referrals into the correct channels for help, websites as well as agencies where they could seek more help. You can just type that in mindline.sg, you will hit the website and it's pretty friendly. I think we need more of such collaborative efforts, and this is a multi-ministry effort, but also tapping on the internet and the very fact that mobile phone usage is ubiquitous nowadays, right? The penetration in Singapore is great, and that's the way to reach out. And that's the way that people may find it easier to reach for their phones and find the help at their fingertips rather than to sort through directories or figure out who to call. We even have a chatbot on board that's emotionally intelligent chatbot called Wiser that can chat with you at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes it's called the 4 a.m. friend because sometimes you can't find someone to talk to, right? So this is how technology could be used even in terms of doing some basic for the non-serious kind of therapy. I think I'll just add on to say that beyond just thinking about how we deal with personally, right? Being able to be more self-aware, know when you are hitting those anxiety or depression or danger points where you know that you should be seeking help. I think the community is the other aspect that needs to be strengthened. And we are also seeing during this time, social networks getting stronger. A good thing that's happened, I suppose, right? Befrienders, volunteers coming up. I mean, right at the height of the pandemic, we saw groups coming together, sprouting up in the community, sewing masks, distributing masks, donating computers for students who are stuck at home, home-based learning and couldn't afford computers, for instance. Hand sanitizers. Okay, some of them were pretty dodgy. I mean, vodka. We were saying that we could exchange the vodka for our alcohol, but anyway, never mind about that. And I think, but this the ground-up activity is what we want to actually encourage even beyond COVID. And you see on the other side of my screen, Design for Impact, something that we are actually doing with Prudential. So Prudential is a very supportive partner, 2nd year running now, of our program to teach design thinking to the community, where they can bring together their ideas, thoughts, and follow a proper methodology and come up with solutions for problems within the community. And we are tackling mental wellness among caregivers, among the seniors, and among youths this year. So we pick a topic, we pick a challenge, and then we throw it out to the community, and we see people come together, learn together, develop solutions together. And hopefully, as we bring the community together, we are not just looking to the government, right, to give us solutions, but we are actually helping each other. And I think if we can build up community strengths and develop the community further, these will outlive this pandemic and any crisis and every crisis that may come in the future. Linked to the social part, I just want to add that the environment is important too. We are finding, interestingly, during this time, more interest in physical environment. I say back to nature. People are starting to rediscover walks around the parks. People are long commutes to CBD, to the Central Business District. They can now just walk along their canals and their park connector networks near their homes. And I think this is very much in line with something that we are also trying to encourage, altering and influencing the physical infrastructure and environment, right? Parks, covered walkways, make the neighborhood more walkable, make accessibility to healthy food easier, so that as we come out of this, living healthy, in the community is actually the default and the norm. And hopefully that's something we can do together with the whole community as well as with other government agencies. So I just want to say that there are many things we can do together beyond what we are seeing visibly or in newspaper reports, and very happy and gratified to see that the community has indeed stepped up, and we are seeing many ground-up initiatives as well as innovative solutions coming forth during this period of time. Yeah, over.
Oh, thanks so much, Dr. Loke. I think I really like your point about, the community strength and that community spirit. And I think what we have seen out of this pandemic really is people coming together to support one another. And when we talk about building mental resilience, it's not just an individual effort. That really, you need the support of the people around us, the community around us. So if this community spirit and togetherness can last beyond the pandemic, I think we will have a very resilient society here. So thank you so much for your point. So Teng Kiat, just kind of building on that, Dr. Loke has spoken about the government's initiatives and also what communities are doing or can do. So what role do you think industries such as insurance can play in helping people feel protected during this crisis?
Thanks, Ming, for the question. I think firstly, we want to view our relationship with our customers as a partnership, right? So I think there are two standpoints which the customer need to bear in mind. So firstly, the protection standpoint, right? It is essential that time and time again on a regular basis, all of us should have a good view of how we are covered, a good understanding of how protected we are. I just want to perhaps quote one candid example. I think if you have not been living under a rock, everybody's been watching this show called Squid Game, right, in Netflix. So there's one scene in Squid Game of which the main character, Song Ji-hoon, was taking care of his mother who unfortunately had diabetes. And when he found out that, oh my goodness, he didn't actually pay for her insurance and she couldn't take care of her hospital needs. I think that's one very basic thing that we need to do. We need to ensure that our basic health insurance is covered. I think that's the foundation of all our protection plans or protection portfolio. And I think that needs to be well assessed in addition to other insurance needs that you need to make sure that you're properly covered, right? Back to my point just now about protection. So that any unexpected events such as a black swan event like this pandemic can be properly taken care of. The other one is preventative standpoint. So it's in a way what Dr. Loke has just mentioned right now. It's great to see a lot of Singaporeans stepping out of their homes now that they have more time, less time on commuting, but more time on their own and with their families to go out to the parks, to go out to the PCN, to go for a run or to go for some cycling to get some exercises. I think that's great because that's part of preventative care as well, so that you can take care of yourself from a physical health, physical fitness perspective. But of course, what the findings that you have just shared also reveal that other than physical, we need to take care of our mental healthness from a preventative standpoint as well. So are there things that we need to know that can help us calm ourselves, right? Be able to collect our mental state a lot better. So are there meditation that you need? Perhaps even go for support, social communities that you can, again, get some help from mental health preventative care perspective. I think those two are quite important. From insurance perspective as well, taking care of our customers, I'm actually quite glad that some of our products actually does do that. For our group insurance, there are a couple of areas of which we have also recently introduced in the last years. I think for our clients and their employees, under our group customized group insurance plans, we have provided coverage for any clinical psychologists or psychiatric treatments right now. We also provide an employee assistance program such that any counseling is needed, they just need to pick up a hotline, and these are managed by professional counselors that they can get some support from. Last but not least as well, we also have rolled out health and wellness program for our group insurance clients so that they can again roll it out for their employees. And other than that as well, we have also added extra feature within our maternity plan, known as PruMom, of which we take care of any post-partum depression or issues that the new mother may actually have after delivering the baby. So these are all areas of which we want to help out in the areas of mental health wellness from the product perspective as well. Yeah. So back to you, Ping.
Well, thank you so much, Teng Kiat. I think time flies when you're having a good conversation. We are almost at the end of the hour. I guess before I end this panel discussion, maybe very quickly from each one of you, one advice that you want to dish out about planning for longevity amidst this pandemic. So yeah, just kind of one quick advice from you. I know you've said a lot over the last 1 hour. So just one last key thought from you for the audience here. Lily, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll still tackle the wealth part. I think we spoke quite a fair bit about it. So really to everyone here, I think let's leverage the positive benefits of what the pandemic has brought about. It's really digitalization and democratization, facilitating financial inclusion. So we can all start investing, accumulate, build resilience, so we can better prepare for and embrace longevity. So that would be my thought.
Thank you so much, Lily. Dr. Loke, would you like to go next?
Yeah, okay, right. I think since as I started with the word preparedness still sticks to mind. I think it's very important to be prepared. Again, not just financially, but also in our own resilience, right? So I think the importance of preparedness is to meet challenges, to be resilient, to bounce back, whether it is a pandemic or some other trial in life. I think personal health-wise, think about your habits, to build up all these good health-promoting habits in your own life. Self-care, being self-aware and then knowing where to find help and when to find help. And of course, make sure you build the community around yourself too, whether it is just taking part in some of these activities that are coming out to care for one another, because a strong community is also what we need in order to build up that resilience, both personally as well as in society. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Loke. And Teng Kiat, we shall end with you.
Well, I'll go back to how I started my comments with your first question, right? Do not forget the 4 legs of the chair, right? The 4 areas of health, wealth, work, and relationship, because you can't just take care of 1 or 2. I think you need to have I'll use the word holistic again, way of looking at all 4, because the interdependencies among the 4 is really so evident through this pandemic. You can't ignore any one of them. And if you take a good balanced approach of looking and taking care of all 4 of them, I think that's where you will have a good experience going forward. So do not forget the 4 legs of the chair.
Thank you so much. And that's health, wealth, work, as well as relationships. So that's with right. That, we've come to the end of our panel discussion today. Thank you very much to our panelists today for sharing your experience and also your insights. I think that has been the most interesting discussion. So thank you very much. And thank you to the audience for tuning in and listening. With this, I'm going to pass the time now over to David to do a closing. David, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much indeed, Ping. That was what a really brilliant, insightful session with some brilliant sharing. I'm certainly going to be readdressing what the 4 legs of my chair look like as well going forwards as well. Really, really good. Thank you to our fabulous speakers, to Go Teng Kiat, to Dr. Loke Wet Cheong, and to Lily Cho as well. And Ping, that was expertly moderated. Really, really appreciate your time, and for all of you that joined us today. And for those of you in the audience as well, hope you had a really good session. Thank you once again to Prudential for your continued support of the Chamber and the longevity agenda. It is a really, really important agenda. I've taken copious notes to take back with me today, so I hope you've done the same thing. I would just like to highlight a couple of things that are coming up in the Chamber's calendar. In particular, we've got our 22nd Annual Business Awards. It's a virtual ceremony this year, But we've got 2 Singaporean Paralympians joining us there, which is really, really great. And Prudential are big supporters of that as well. So please do join us on the evening of the 4th of October to celebrate the very best of business success. And we've also got a Closing the Gender Attrition Gap event on the 5th of October coming up as well. You'll receive a feedback form, and please do fill that out. It helps me and the Chamber team to understand what you'd like to hear more of in the future and how today's session went. And that leaves me just to say a final thank you to our brilliant panel, to Ping moderating, to Prudential for supporting, and for you for joining us today. I hope you have a great evening when you get there, and take care and see you soon.